Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
And this is episode 198.
Today we're talking about how much harder is running a marathon versus running a half marathon.
I mean, distance-wise, it's double the distance.
Obviously, yes.
I think a lot of people think it's double everything.
Yeah.
And so we're here to kind of walk you through it, debunk it, and especially if this is something that you are listening to thinking, ooh, there's a little whisper in your head thinking, I kind of want to do a full, but maybe you're a little scared or intimidated. This is an excellent episode to listen to. Or if you're a marathoner and you know there are people in your ecosystem that have worked their way up or are working their way up to a half, maybe give them a little nudge with this one.
Yes, so is it harder? Yes, absolutely. Is it doable? Yes, I think so. Time investment here. It is double the distance, but I will say it is not exactly double the time of training.
I think a lot of people just automatically assume that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big thing. It's a big selling point, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Half marathon I think it's the hardest distance. I think you're going very, very hard on the top end, right, of your zone 3, which is a pretty even zone 4, low zone 4 type of uncomfortable area for many minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Many minutes. Marathon is a much more aerobic pace, obviously, for a longer amount of moving time, but it's just, you need to do a lot of training to be able to execute a half really well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not double that to get to a more aerobic, longer distance.
Yeah, so the pace is more manageable for a longer time in a marathon. What actually does change in your training, though, is your weekend long runs. So those are going to go a lot longer past half marathon distance, which obviously takes a lot more time because we're running those paces not at our goal marathon pace, but at goal marathon pace plus 30 to 90 seconds a lot of the time. So that's going to extend out your training time on the weekends.
Anything longer than 3 hours, 15 minutes of moving time, we really can't recover from in training. Mm-hmm. So when we're training for a half marathon, a lot of times we will train all the way up to 13, sometimes 14 plus miles as our longest run. So you will get, over your race distance, which is really great from mentally, check the box, right? But the reason that we can do that numerically is we can recover from it, right? Because it's well under that kind of 3-hour threshold. When we're talking about a full marathon, we only go up to 18, 19, 20, sometimes 22 miles. We don't go all the way to 26.2 miles because there's really no way for us to be able to recover from that and still be able to race and have fresh legs. So yeah, the long runs get longer, but those are also not double because, again, you're capping out at more than your total 26.2 distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that kind of leads into our training differences. So you have more mileage that you'll be doing overall, but as we just said, the weekday training from Monday to Friday is largely the same. We're not doing too much longer of quality sessions on our speed or our tempos for a marathon training cycle. But we do have those longer long runs. You'll also have some more varied workouts. So our speed workouts, while we will be doing similar speed workouts to our half marathon training cycle, there might be a little bit more emphasis on some tempo work, maybe some hill work. It might be a little bit different. We also have a little bit greater risk of injury when we're training for a marathon because we're training more. And so those long runs, as you just mentioned, that you can't recover from, we get into a little bit more pounding on our joints, pounding on our body, and recovery becomes a lot more important in our training to make sure that we keep those injuries either addressed when they happen or away completely.
Something that my first endurance coach kind of as an adult athlete always emphasized was also when you're going for longer distance stuff, you have a longer runway, right? So if it's an 18-week training program for a full and you had a 12-week program, let's say for a half, when you get to your peak mileage 3 weeks out, for 18 weeks, it's your week 15. Yeah, that's your biggest week, but that's on top of 15 weeks of bigger weeks, right? For a half, if it's a 12-week program, you're peaking out in week 10. So that's 5 weeks less and less overall volume. So all of that to say, it really compounds. You're not going to be surprised by this one, but there's going to be a greater emphasis on the need for strength work. Why?
I left this one for you.
I know. Half marathoners should absolutely be doing this too, because like I just said at the top of all of this, I do think that half marathon is the hardest distance to race fully. I think it's very, very hard. But your cardiopulmonary system is always going to adapt like lickety split. Here we go. And your musculoskeletal system is always going to be behind. And especially if we're adding in things like new volumes and longer runways, we are going to need to fortify that musculoskeletal system to be able to sustain that training load. So strength work, please sweet baby Jesus, do it. Next up, full marathon training is absolutely harder on your body. Again, you're asking it to do more. So as races go longer, you're going to have more aches and pains. You absolutely are. Like, that's going to happen, right? You're doing new distances for the first time. And to your point, it's a more moderate pace, especially for the long runs. So you're going to be going exponentially longer from a moving time standpoint. It's definitely harder on your joints. You're going to, again, feel a little rickety. And it's more difficult to recover from them, right? We know that the longer you go, it's going to take, instead of, 24 hours, up to 60 hours sometimes for your body to fully repair from those things, which means you're going to be heading into training before you fully recovered, which is why recovery becomes so important. Things like tubs and boots and legs up the wall, everything you can do. And definitely blisters and chafing. It's going to be more real because, especially if you're doing this in a summer fall season where it's nice and toasty, you are going to be sweaty and wet for a long time and thus rubbing for a long time. So get yourself some chafe stick. Love Robyn.
Yeah, I think there's it's surprising to folks that once you go past the half marathon distance that it just feels so different. Feels different on your body, but your body also reacts differently. You might be doing great and have a kit that you've worn for all of your half marathons, but when you go to run a marathon at mile 18, suddenly you are raw under your armpits. So the difference between that toll on your body is so real. Next up is how fueling is much more important in a marathon training cycle. So lots of different components of this. A lot of runners, quote unquote, hit the wall between miles 18 and 20. And it can be due to a lack of muscular endurance, like if you didn't give yourself a proper runway for training. But more often than not, this is a fueling issue.
Yeah, this is such a big one. Everyone assumes I just wasn't properly trained or I didn't do the right things. And a lot of times it's like, no, you just ran out of carbs.
Yeah, exactly. So dialing in that nutrition strategy, you can kind of get away with BSing it on a half marathon, to be honest.
True, it's true.
You might not feel great at the end, but a lot of runners can get through. If you've had one gel in a half marathon, you could probably make it through. For our marathon training and our marathon racing, it is a very different story, and this is just so important.
And this is something that you really should be practicing on all of your longer efforts, anything longer than an hour. I mean, your gut training, I don't know what episode it was maybe 10 ago, but training your gut to be able to sustain that is the most controllable thing that you have on race day.
Yeah, and so this goes also into hydration and electrolyte balance. This is really important, particularly if you're training through a summer months, to make sure that you are up on your hydration and that you're not only taking care of it in your training, but also in your daily life. And that goes for daily nutrition as well. We need to make sure that we are fueling our bodies to recover and repair from all of the work that we're doing. It just becomes exponentially more important as we go. So not just in the training, but also outside.
Next up, it's a greater mental challenge. Just know that going into it, right? It's going to be longer. The long runs are going to be longer. Again, if you're doing them during very popular summer fall season, they're also going to be very hot. You are going to have some dark moments. I think sometimes people get to those though and they think, well, I guess I'm just not cut out for this. It's like, no, that's actually part of this. Yeah. Is that you have to kind of feel very mentally dark in order to feel and see the light and troubleshoot and figure out your way out of it. You might be doubting your ability to get it done because, again, it is weird to race 26.2 and get to 20 and be like, well, I hope I can do that last 10K. We promise you can. Your body very much remembers multiple days in a row of effort as one single effort, which is how you can get to 26.2 having trained 20. But really, my big hack for this one is training with people. I mean, I think that really helps. And you don't even have to tell them necessarily that you're mentally drained, but just relying on each other to pick each other up when you need to, if you're similarly paced, is really, really helpful. And it gets you out of your own damn way.
So we just went through a lot of the challenges from moving from the half marathon to the marathon distance, things that you can expect, but it is possible for you to do. So how can you go from a half marathon to a full marathon? First up is to give yourself a long enough runway. You mentioned the training cycles are longer for a marathon, and that's by design. It's to get your body to be prepared to do that distance. So if you give yourself a longer runway, it's a lot more gentle of an experience as you build because it's progressive, and suddenly you are running your longest long runs, longest time you've ever run every single weekend, which is amazing.
We cannot say this one enough. Don't cram for a marathon if it's your first marathon. It's not going to be a fun experience. You're a lot more likely to get injured. I know, we have a lot of people who kind of avoid training, not necessarily at Edge, but marathoners in general. If it's their first one, it's very intimidating. And then they'll try to hustle for the last 12 weeks. It's just going to be garbagey. And I promise you, it's going to be a lot better if you start at that 18 or 20 week mark out, which is crazy. That's almost like a half of a year, we know. But that's really going to allow for those gradual adaptations, and you'll be able to have true recovery weeks. Not to get too nerdy here, but again, when you have someone writing plans that knows what they're doing, you're not just getting it online, or maybe you have an online one that you trust. If this is your first marathon, I personally prefer to bring those people in a 2 build and 1 cut. So some training plans, including our group plan here at Edge, most of them are 3 build weeks, which increase about 10 to 15% week on week, and then a recovery week that's at least a 25% cut before you start the next 3-week build. If you have a longer runway, you have the opportunity to have a 2-week build and a 1-week cut, which is a wonderful scenario if you are doing something for the first time, whether that's a full marathon or if your first 50K, first 50 miler. If they have runway, I will back them up 22 weeks. I just wrote a training program yesterday for CEM. It's a 21-week training program. And this is for someone who's done a few marathons, but I know that she could use a 2. This is very busy this time of year. She could use a 2 up and 1 down approach in order to get her to maximize fitness goals.
Yeah, so you definitely want to get yourself a coach, or just make sure you do not wing it when you are training for your first marathon. We also want to incorporate strength work, so that is a big key. I know that we say it all the time. We're going to keep saying that you need to do your strength work because it becomes exponentially more important as we get into the later miles of a race, that you are able to maintain good form and that your muscles can fight off that fatigue.
How the heck am I going to fit strength work in if I'm doing more miles?
This is a great question. Well, you could save a shower, double it up.
That's exactly how. Save yourself a shower. For real, though. If you have an easy run, especially, you can do strength right before or after that and go straight into one and the other, as long as you're not lifting super, super heavy, which you probably aren't because you're in marathon mode. But I will tell you, you can get so much done in 30 to 45 minutes that you are not only becoming a better version of yourself, but your run efficiency is going to improve. You're saving yourself a shower. You will thank us later.
Yes. And I think even, 30 to 45 minutes can sound daunting to people, but if you are consistent about it throughout your week, you can do 5 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes of strength. I pair it onto every single recovery run and have my athletes do a series. And it's the accumulation of it. Again, we'd rather have you do 15 minutes a couple times a week than do one 30-minute session and then not touch it for another week. So get that strength in.
What he said. Last one, you guys saw this one coming. It's prioritizing recovery. You can, as Coach Chris said, you can kind of bullshit your way through a half with nutrition. The same is true with recovery. I do think that the volumes are there. Your body knows that it is going to be able to recover, that you get past that mark with full training, both in terms of the duration of the program as well as the individual week volume. So making sure, number one recovery tool, sleep. Right? Making sure you get a little bit of extra sleep or that you're prioritizing it. Making sure that you can do things like foam rolling, take an ice bath, schedule it in. Even once a week is going to make such a big difference.
So there you have it. You can do a marathon. If you've done a half, it is within your reach. It's not that big of a jump, but there are some big differences. So make sure that you get a good plan, give yourself a runway, and we'll see you out there.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Ment. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.